Hello there, welcome to the Football Bloc. My name is Brandon, and today I'm going to give you my reactions to the 2025 Club World Cup round of 16, and I'm going to see how my predictions went. So if that sounds interesting, let's hop right into it.
Eu quis amar, mas tive medo e quis salvar.
So the round of 16 has come to a close. 8 teams advance to the quarterfinals, and 8 teams have gone home. Before we look to the quarterfinals, though, let's look back at this round, look at each of these matches, and of course, see how accurate my predictions were. So let's hop right into it. The first game we're going to look at is the all-Brazilian roundup here. We had Palmeiras going up against Botafogo. This game I actually went to live. Hopefully, if I have enough time, I will finish editing the match vlog that I created. It was a great game to witness. Not the most exciting in terms of what happened on the pitch in terms of attacking outputs, goal scoring chances, stuff like that. But the atmosphere, the fan atmosphere from both teams, but particularly from Palmeiras, was wonderful. And it was also a super tense game. It was it felt like a CONMEBOL match here. It felt like a Copa Libertadores knockout round match here. Didn't really feel like Club World Cup or, any type of European football or something like that. It was so chippy. There was lots of fights. There was lots of, chirping between the players, things like that. Wonderful stuff to see. On TV might not be the most interesting game to watch, but in person, it was an awesome experience. And like I said, it was this all Brazilian affair right here. Very interesting to see in this stage of the tournament, especially considering there's only 4 Brazilian teams in this tournament. So the fact that 2 of them are facing each other in the knockout rounds is pretty cool. Also unexpected, but I think that Palmeiras and Botafogo had 2 really good runs up until this point. I predicted that Botafogo would be the team that will come out on top in this game because I felt that the performance that they had against PSG in particular, the way that they were so clinical and so precise in their counterattacking tactics was going to be enough to overcome Palmeiras. That was not the case there. I said that it was going to be 1-0 to Botafogo. It was actually 1-0 to Palmeiras. Now, this game, it was going to be a question over who takes control over the ball. Obviously, these are 2 more reactive, more pragmatic teams. In this case, it was Palmeiras that took control over the ball, took more possession, had the more momentum on their side, and they just started chipping away at that Botafogo defense. I think a big part of their success was just Alba Ferreira and maybe the familiarity that he has playing against Botafogo many times with Palmeiras over the past 6 or something years. He kind of expected to see what their tactics were, and he reacted brilliantly there. Now, this is very interesting because Botafogo hasn't lost to Palmeiras in, I believe, over 2 years. So this is mentally a very, very strong victory for Palmeiras and a very important victory for them. Paulinho scored a wonderful solo goal in the 100th minute, and I think it was a deserved win for Palmeiras. They had far more of the attacking chances, even though Botafogo, for the most part, were pretty solid and restricted them to only a few of those chances there. But at the end of the day, Palmeiras march on. Now, they did get a red card in the last few minutes there, Gustavo Gomes, which I think will hurt them in the next round, unfortunately. But moving on to the next game, we have Benfica going up against Chelsea, a replay of the 2013 Europa League final. Very interesting to see this play out in the Club World Cup as well. Benfica, I think, was one of the surprise teams of this tournament here. Obviously, everyone knows who Benfica are. They're always a solid team, but I think they outperformed expectations here, especially when you consider how poorly they started the tournament in that first half against Boca Juniors. They got to this point here against Chelsea, a team that has been very hot and cold. You don't really know what to expect. But Chelsea came out the gate swinging. They played some wonderful football. They were restricting Benfica to really only counter-attacking chances throughout the entirety of the first half there and most of the second half. Now, Benfica did I think, defend pretty well for the most part, but they got undone by a wonderful free kick from Reece James there, and it looked like Chelsea was going to hold on to a tight 1-0 victory until there was a crazy weather delay where the game had to be put on pause for nearly 2 hours because there was a massive thunderstorm. And this is something that we've seen in this tournament a little bit, not to this degree. In fact, I went to the Palmeiras versus Al Ahly game. We only had to stop for about 15 minutes at most because there was some lightning in the sky. This one was a bit abnormal there. And I've seen lots of these Europeans and, people from across the world complain about this. And I totally understand, why they would be annoyed at this. But as an American, it's funny. From my point of view, I'm totally used to this as someone who's been watching MLS and the Gold Cup, for example. Any of these tournaments here in America during the summer, you kind of come to expect this as an American soccer fan. So it is funny to see non-Americans have to come to terms with this. And to me, it's just like it's another weather delay, But, from my point of view, I'm used to it because I've been seeing this happen numerous times over my life as a soccer fan. But as for the game itself, this weather delay completely derailed Chelsea's game plan because heading into the last few minutes, because it was literally the 85th minute when they had to stop the game, Benfica then suddenly awoke. Angel Di Maria, who I think had been having a great game up at this point and had been having a wonderful tournament, he started to cause some serious problems for Chelsea's defense there. He was able to win a penalty. He scored the penalty. It was tied 1-1. But Benfica made a few silly defensive mistakes there that led to Chelsea scoring. And then at that point, I think both teams were just so tired and so out of it that Chelsea kind of ran away with it at the end. They scored a second and a third and a fourth in that order. Obviously, they won 4-1 on the night. I think that this doesn't reflect how the game truly was because I thought Benfica played really well. Chelsea, yes, were the better team, deserved to go through, but a 4-1 result is a little bit too harsh on them in my opinion. As for my prediction, unfortunately, I thought that Benfica was going to grab the upset here against Chelsea, and that almost happened. That was so close to happening, but I think at the end of the day, Benfica kind of just reached their limit, and it was also just a really strange game with the weather delay and everything. So Chelsea are the ones that march on. Now moving on to the next game, we have the first shock upset that we're going to look at here. We have Inter Milan going up against Fluminense. And this was a very interesting game when you look at how these two teams are similar in the sense that they are both pragmatic teams as well. Now, you would say Inter Milan is not a purely defensive team as the stereotype for Serie A teams go. They have a lot of attacking firepower, and they're a very unique team in how they play. They're not just a purely defensive park the bus type team, but I think that their weaknesses here that we have seen some glimpses of throughout this tournament was fully exposed by Fluminense. And a big part of that is the fatigue that is in this squad. Obviously, they had such a tough season heading into this tournament. As I said multiple times on this channel, the way that they finished the season as well, not just physically but mentally, was probably so draining to Inter Milan. The way that they got obliterated in the Champions League final, losing Serie A on the last day of the season and getting destroyed by AC Milan, their crosstown rival, in the Coppa Italia semifinals. I think that fully came into effect here when you can just look how tired the players looked. Lautaro Martinez, for example, I mean, he didn't play bad. He had some really good chances, but you just felt like on any other day, he would put those into the back of the net. And that's just one player. The rest of the team looked tired. But I think this is more so Fluminense just tactically getting the game right, because Inter Milan has been tired, if you want to use that word, throughout the whole tournament, and yet they were able to impressively defeat River Plate. They were able to come back from behind from Urawa Red Diamonds. So this result from Fluminense, I think, was a tactical masterclass from the manager, Renato Gaucho, who is a famous Brazilian manager there. Herman Cano scored a bit of a lucky goal, but still right place at the right time in the second minute. And then from that moment on, Fluminense had to sit back and defend, soak up pressure, but they looked so dangerous. They almost scored a second multiple times throughout the first half and then the second half as well. They would grab, I would say, a bit of a lucky goal where it was a bit of just a runaway of their silly deflection from a header in the last minute of the game. But Fluminense, by and large, by far the better team in this game. Phenomenal defensive performance, in particular from Thiago Silva, who rolled back the years. This guy is going to be 41 in a few months. He rolled back the years and he marshaled that back line just to perfection there. As for my prediction here, I thought that it was going to be really tight defensively, which it was, but I thought that would head the game to extra time and to penalties where Inter Milan would go through. And obviously, that was not the case here. I think Fluminense just outperformed Inter Milan from a tactical point of view. Now, the next game we're going to look at here is yet another upset. We have Man City versus Al Hilal. Now, this game was very, very strange. The way that the first half started off, it was all Man City. They got a very lucky goal, I would say. The ball kind of just pinged around there. Bernardo Silva slapped it in. There was some question of a handball or something like that, but it was looking like it was going to be all Man City. The way that their interplay from their midfield and the front three, the way they were just tearing apart the back line for Al Hilal, it looked like that they were going to score a third or fourth, and they almost did, if not for some heroics from Yassine Bono. The second half, though, whatever Simone Inzaghi said to the Al Hilal players in the locker room at halftime, it worked because they were a completely different team heading out of the team tunnel there. They scored with a bit of a silly goal as well. Marcus Leonardo scored to equalize the game, but you could still tell that Man City were having some trouble dealing with the wingers from Al Hilal. And then Malcolm just exploded in form. Obviously, he led to the first goal there, but then he scored a breakaway to put Al Hilal in the lead 2-1, and then the game just descended into chaos. Then Haaland scored off of a corner, but then Koulibaly scored off of a corner. Then Phil Foden got subbed on. He scored a really nice goal after a beautiful pass in. Very good finish from a tight angle. And the game was really close, but you do have to say that Al Hilal had the better chances. They were the more dangerous team going forward, and eventually they scored the winner. Marcus Leonardo, again, another weird deflection there, but you can tell that Al Hilal was causing some serious issues to the Man City backline, and it's hard to understand why this happened. Man City was so good up until this point. I just look at their last game, how they utterly dismantled Juventus, versus Al Hilal, I think, have been good, but not to the level of defeating Man City. Some people have, I think, blamed this on the Rodri effect, where this team is too reliant on Rodri, and we saw how good he was against Juventus. Therefore, they come away with that smashing victory here, versus this game, he was very poor, and this is the result of that. And I do think that is very true. I do think that this team is, at this point, so reliant, and there really isn't a plan B. But I also think that Simone Inzaghi just simply outclassed Pep Guardiola here in terms of just the tactical lineup in this game. He got the better of Pep Guardiola. You could say in his mind it's personal revenge for the 2023 Champions League final. Also, I think this is a huge result for Saudi football, for Al Hilal, and it really shows that a team like Al Hilal, yes, they are full of star-studded squad as players. This is a squad that could compete in the Champions League. But it's not just the players on the pitch. The team that they have together, the team mentality, is also very, very strong. That was always the question. We never have seen the Saudi teams go up against European teams or something like that, and you would think, okay, yeah, they have the great players, but how good really are they? Is this a genuine team? And this is the proof that that is true, that this is a genuine team here. And now they have a good path to, you would say, to the final of this tournament. So it'll be very interesting to see where Al Hilal go from here. Phenomenal performance from them. As for my prediction, I got this one completely wrong. I thought that this was going to be a very easy victory for Man City. I said 3-0 on the night, and they did score 3 goals, but then they also conceded 4. I had no idea that Al Hilal was going to show up with this super impressive performance like that. So this one, I think out of all these predictions here, this is the one that I got the most wrong, surprisingly. Now, as for the next game that we're going to look at, we have PSG versus Inter Miami, and this game actually was the most straightforward out of all the games here. PSG came out 4-0 winners, and you could just tell by the first goal that they scored. It was a set piece there, and João Neves came in with a header totally unmarked on the back, and you could just tell from that point it was going to be a long night for Inter Miami. I think Inter Miami did a great job to get to this point, but you always felt that the team was a little, unstable. They were just completely riding on momentum, completely riding on vibes. They were just waiting for that one moment for Messi to pop up, that one moment for Suarez to pop up. Heroics from the goalkeeper, Oscar Ustari. And, in a tournament, that can take you pretty far, but all it takes is for reality to come crashing down on you with a big team like PSG. And that is exactly what happened here. It was 4-0, but all 4 goals were scored in the first half. The second half, PSG kind of just took their foot off the gas. They wanted to conserve their players for the next round. You can't really blame them. You can say it was maybe a little disrespectful, but, you can't really blame them. Inter Miami did have some good chances in the second half, but nothing really of note that troubled Donnarumma, you have to say. It's a shame to see these guys like Messi, Suarez, and Busquets kind of just be past their prime. We've seen them roll back the years multiple times throughout this tournament, but you're not going to be able to do that against PSG, who are arguably the best team in the world. Yes, I'm a Barcelona fan, so I think Barcelona are the best team in the world, but PSG are the European champions, so you do have to give them that. You have to say that the midfield from PSG was phenomenal on the night, in particular, João Neves, who's been having a great tournament, along with Vitinha, along with Fabian Ruiz, and Achraf Hakimi, yet again, has been amazing as well, and he scored the 4th goal there. My prediction was that it was going to be a straightforward victory for PSG. I said 3-1. I thought that Messi would score a free kick, or at least score some revenge goal against PSG. That unfortunately was not the case there, though. On to the next match. We had a very exciting, very end-to-end game against Flamengo going up against Bayern Munich. And this was a game that you have to commend Flamengo because they went toe-to-toe with Bayern Munich, and it was a respectable performance. When you look at these other Brazilian teams here, I think that from an outsider looking in, if you're someone that doesn't regularly watch South American club football, you would assume that, it's a Brazilian league, the Jogo Bonito, they're going to be playing all this expansive, very open and dynamic attacking football. And you do see that from a lot of teams in the Brazilian league, but these teams here, the top echelon that have made it to the Club World Cup, have all played pragmatic, to use the silly word, terror ball that you've seen from these teams like Palmeiras, from Botafogo, and from Fluminense. In particular, Fluminense and Botafogo and Palmeiras. Flamengo is the odd one out. They are the team that has been playing if you want to use the stereotype, Jogo Bonito. I know that's not a perfect, way to describe their style, but it is a much more attacking style. It's not pragmatic at all. They do concede some goals, and they much more are an attack-oriented team, as we can see how many goals that they've scored throughout the entirety of this tournament. And it has worked. You look at how they thoroughly outplayed Chelsea. Now, you can say that maybe it was naive to try and play like that against Bayern, considering that Bayern is, a team that does the same thing as they do, just better because they have better players. But at the same time, there is a respect in a team that knows how they play, that has an identity and wants to play that identity. And like I said, this game was super tough, super exciting, but all 4 goals that Flamengo conceded were from defensive mistakes. The opening goal was an own goal there from Gonzalo Plata off a corner, just not good marking in the box. If you look at the 2 goals that Harry Kane scored, it was because Flamengo tried to play out the back and then they lost the ball in crucial areas. So if you're going to go toe-to-toe with another team, you can't do that while also making these silly defensive mistakes especially against a team as clinical as Bayern Munich. That being said, though, Flamengo made the game very interesting. Gerson had a wonderful golazo. amount of power that he put behind that shot is insane. And it looked like it was going to burst the hole through the net. And then Jorginho was able to score a penalty to make it 3-2 at that point of the match. And Flamengo had a whole host of other chances. You felt that if they played any other team in this round, perhaps with the exception of PSG, they would have won. They probably would have gone through just with how talented they are. And yes, they are going out in the round of 16, but they have shown a very, very good light on the Brazilian league, I have to say. My prediction was that Flamengo was going to win 3-2. I thought that they were really going to exploit the defensive mistakes that Bayern Munich has. And they were on occasion, but ultimately Bayern Munich was more clinical than them here. Now let's move on to the next match. We have Real Madrid versus Juventus. And this match was also straightforward, but not for the same reasons that, say, PSG versus Miami was straightforward. This was kind of no surprises just because of the result on the night, which was Real Madrid going through, not necessarily playing the best, but doing just enough to overcome Juventus. And Juventus, I think, weren't bad by any means. They gave Real Madrid a good run for their money, but how many times have we seen this before where, maybe the other team even starts playing better. Maybe they have a few chances and they force Courtois into a bunch of saves. But as the match goes on, Real Madrid just get more and more comfortable in their groove, and then one of their extremely talented players creates a chance, and another one of their extremely talented players finishes off that chance, and then they just ride off with that victory there. That is exactly what happened in this match here. Gonzalo Garcia is the one that scored to make it 1-0 to Real Madrid, the score that they would hold on to for the entirety of the 90 minutes. Gonzalo Garcia has been wonderful in the absence of Mbappe. Mbappe did come off the bench in this game, but overall, it was a pretty solid performance from Real Madrid. We're seeing them get better and better with each of these matches here. It wasn't perfect, but overall, I think they were the deserved team to go through. They probably should have scored a second or third, but Di Gregorio in goal for Juventus was great. As for Juventus, I think that the last game that they had, that crushing victory against Man City, just completely ruined all momentum that they had, because they started off the tournament great against Al Ain and Wydad. Granted, not the strongest opponents, but still they scored 10 goals over those two games, and the momentum is a huge thing in cup competitions. And yet they rotated the squad and they didn't take the game against Man City seriously. They ended up losing 5-2, and that just ruined their whole tournament, in my opinion. My prediction was that it was going to be Real Madrid 2, Juventus 0. And while I didn't get the exact amount of goals right, I think I got the vibe completely right in this match. Now moving on to the last match we're going to look at, we have Borussia Dortmund versus Monterrey. And this was a very fun game to watch too. It was actually very end-to-end and very close. The way that the match opened up, Monterrey had tons of chances, but Borussia Dortmund also had a lot of chances, and they were the ones that were more clinical with it. In particular, the link-up play between Adeyemi and Guirassy was absolutely ruthless to that Monterrey backline. They carved them apart so many times. Guirassy scored a brace, 2 very nice goals in the first half, and he could have had a hat-trick as well. That being said, I did mention that Monterrey had some chances in their favor. They weren't able to score in the first half, but then at the very beginning of the second half, they did score to have the deficit, to make it 2-1. And then Borussia Dortmund kind of just fizzled out. That link-up play that you saw between those two players, Adeyemi and Guirassy, kind of just went nowhere. And Monterrey was in the driver's seat, and they came so close to equalizing. In fact, in the last moment of the game, there was a header there from Sergio Ramos, of all people, the guy that you would expect to score, and he came so close. It was literally, his header was like an inch away from the inside of the post there. And you feel that if Monterrey scored that and to tie it 2-2, that goes into extra time, they have all the momentum on their side. You feel that they would have come out on top. So Borussia Dortmund do end up going through 2-1 after the end of the game, but it wasn't the most convincing victory. There was some positives to take from that with how clinical Guirassy has been over not just game, but also, the past few games as well, how important Adeyemi is to this team. But defensively, they still look shaky. This isn't the Dortmund that we saw at the end of the last season at, for example, that second game that they had against Barcelona, how strong they were in the quarterfinals. they are not the same team as that. They still look like they're in preseason or something like that. As for my prediction, I thought that Monterrey was going to grab the upset considering how great they played in their last game against Oravo Red Diamonds. And they did have some good moments here as well, but I think when you have defenders that, you're not normally going up against guys as talented as Adeyemi and Garassi, you're going to get exploited there, and that's what happened in the first half there. So Monterrey can leave this tournament with their heads held high, but ultimately those two players for Borussia Dortmund were the more clinical, and they are the reason that they go through to the quarterfinals. So anyway, guys, that has been my predictions for the round of 16 of the 2025 Club World Cup. Let me know what you think. If you did predictions, how did they go? Overall, I think my predictions were decent, not great. I think I got the vibe of most of these matches correct, even if I didn't call the correct winner. But I have to say, these games were pretty exciting. In particular, that Man City versus Al Hilal game, I think that has been the best game of this tournament. It's either that or the Porto Al Ali game, which I talked about in a previous video. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this video with a friend. Follow the Football Bloc on social media. But anyway, guys, my name is Brandon. This has been the Football Bloc, and I hope you have a nice rest of your night.
Eu quis amar.